I'd like to call this budget in committee meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, the roll call. Sorry, Madam Clerk. The roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. There are no announcements, nor is there any addendum this evening. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, then I'm going to hand the chair over to our budget chair, Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship. We will continue then with 5.1 capital reports. 5.11 was deferred from the meeting November 18th, 2025, when it was moved by Councillor Noyes. That's on the floor.
Yes, I'd like to speak to this, and thank you. And I appreciate the fact that budgets are tight, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm hoping that this year we can at least put forth the preliminary stuff, like the design and the engineering that's required. I think it's about $80,000, and next year plan to the actual installation. And I'd like to hear what some of the other councillors think.
Councillor Christensen.
I tend to support Councillor Noyes' suggestion. I think I've spoken before about the fact that although I very much appreciate the staff work and the professional standards that are established with respect to park per population limits, I'm also equally appreciative of the geography of Fort Erie and the relative distance from all other water features with respect to A.C. Douglas Park. So I do think that actually initiating the planning is something that we should be looking at. And I also I understand the issue of the washrooms. I'm of two minds with respect to the washrooms, and because it's a substantial cost, although and it's the case with both the entire splash pad concept and the washrooms versus no washrooms, is that the longer it's left, the more expensive installation becomes with respect to the looking at the long-term master plan for the town and the proposal to put it into the 10-year plan. There are a number of kids there, and their parents pay taxes. I think it's incumbent upon us to, as much as possible, try to balance financial discretion and service to the public.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Your Worship.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to Councillor Noyes' request, but I've got issues with respect to the timing. And when I spoke to Councillor Noyes earlier today, she spoke about a study. What she really meant was design work, and you can't do design work unless you know what the facility is going to look like. That means that we will be looking at, as I understand it, the lower cost of the alternatives. And to be honest with you, there is the potential for significant growth in Douglastown. We know that through Spring Creek Estates and through the work that's already been done there. I'd be hesitant to commit funding to design work on a facility that may very well be more appropriately the larger one with the washroom facilities. We don't know that now. We may not know that next year. What I've told Councillor Noyes is that I would support this being placed into a 5-year period of time within which we would know or have better insights, I would hope, into what this area is going to look like and whether we can amend the development charges bylaw to include funding for this to be paid for through development charges. And because once we design something and build it, that'll be it for Douglastown. That will be the facility that they will have. And maybe the residents are content with that. Maybe they're not. I'd be more inclined, if I were living out there, to want to see whether there is a warrant for a larger facility that would have washroom capacity. So I won't support that this year. I'm prepared to support the project being included in the 5-year capital program, and perhaps maybe a commitment to something in the interim where there would be a trigger for a determination to be made. Is there going to be growth in Douglastown or not? If it doesn't appear that the growth is taking place, maybe that's the trigger. Maybe it's 2 years from now. That's the trigger where we decide to go with a smaller facility as opposed to the larger one. So that's what's in my mind right now, and I've shared that with Councillor Noyes. I can't say that she agrees with me, and that's fine. I get that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good. Other comments? Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. And just a couple of, well, actually one question I wanted to ask with respect to the report. It shows washrooms and maintenance building coming in at $290,000. And I'm just curious, when we've built other facilities, i.e. the bathroom in Village Square for downtown Ridgeway and the temporary bathroom that we're considering for the upcoming budget along Erie Road being in the 50,000 mark, what's the difference between these two types of washroom facilities?
Director?
Mr. Chair, I would like to defer that question to Ms. Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Lewis. So the washroom facility is the original cost of the one that was done at Douglas Park. That was $383,000, and that included the servicing and mechanical services and works and permits for that washroom facility. It's just for that washroom facility alone. So when taking into consideration for Douglastown, we were thinking that it would have one washroom and then one facility room, where the one over in Douglas Park has 2 washrooms and 1 facility room.
Okay. That answers that. Thank you. And then just a couple of, I'm interested to hear what other councillors are thinking. I know, like Councillor Christensen's mentioned, I'm inclined to support the planning portion of this because I think it's been talked about for a number of years. But really no
And thank you. I appreciate everybody's comment, not particularly the mayor's. But again, I have brought this up at least for the last 5 years. And every year I'm told next year. Last year specifically, when we were talking about Ferndale Park having a new splash pad, and I mentioned, well, it's not even due yet. It's 2 more years before we're spending $680,000 on Ferndale Park. Yet Black Creek doesn't have one. And I was told, I think if you watch the actual video of it, by the mayor said, hopefully next year. Well, this is next year. This is next year about 5 times. I waited 20 years for my dog park, and constantly deferring these things doesn't help. Now, Ferndale Park, I have no problem with Ferndale Park, but the fact that I support it, and that's not the issue. But $680,000 for a splash pad that isn't moving from where it currently is and already has the bathrooms. So I'm thinking we need to kind of look at how we're just coming up with numbers and putting numbers on a page. I don't know where they came up with the 680,000. But again, I'm happy for Ferndale, and I'm not arguing the fact that, it needs to be replaced now, but again, it was 2 years before the date. Talking about deferring it for years, I think, and in the staff report, it talks about the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, which I think people know my opinion on that. Shelve it, don't open it, don't ever look at it again. And then that's being kind. And we're talking about development charges. We do have $1.5 million in reserves. And yes, you do have, when we take it out, we have to replace it. There is growth happening in Black Creek. There's been a significant growth, and I would say, if you look at the houses, we're not talking about small bungalows. We're talking about two-story, large, 2,500 square foot houses. We're not talking about a retirement community moving in there. We're talking about families buying these houses. I think they've waited long enough. There isn't a walkable or bikeable spray pad in Black Creek, anywhere close to it. And in 5 years, when we're going to do a new census, I can't remember everything that the staff have put in there, you need 7,500 people to qualify for a spray pad in your ward. If you use their math of 750 kids from 0 to 12. And I got the numbers from the EDTC, 19% of the population is under 19, so I'm assuming that 10% of that 19% is 0 to 12. I'm putting my own numbers in there. I think there is a demonstrated community need. I think if you would see that park in the summertime, how well used and how many people are using it, it's a beehive. I mean, I'm sure, I know I was given pictures of the people. I would imagine the mayor also got pictures of the number of kids and the families using that park. I do hope for the support. I know it's, and I was suggested to one of the councillors that I break it into 2 years, and I think that's the way to go. And I'm hoping that, we do the planning this year. Yes, we can't. Ferndale Park, you do the design, and we already have an idea what we want. I said, nothing elaborate, something like Stevensville, so we kind of had to have the design already. And I'm not thinking of anything big and better. If in 15 years the place explodes and there's a lot more people, you can always expand these things. It's not like it can't ever be changed or whatever. And right now we have a porta potty. That's what we have there in the summertime. We're not asking for the bathroom. We're asking for a very basic splash pad for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Your worship?
Yeah, so I just wanted to maybe zero in on the design aspect. So the distinction between the higher cost alternative and the lower cost alternative is really just whether or not there are washrooms in a maintenance building? So then, okay, so design work on the pad itself could be done without regard to a washroom or a maintenance building, but then those could be added in at some future date? Is that a possibility?
Through the chair, to your worship, yes, that could be an option. I mean, that would be a little bit more cost later on, because then you're having to then remobilization for the construction crews to get there. You have to kind of reroute the designing, like the utilities from where the box may be to where the washroom facility is. But primarily, yes, the lower cost alternative was basically excluding the washing facility from the design. I also just want to make a clarification that when we talk about design, the geotechnical study also has to be included, and we would also include the NHST and the contingency that would be comparable for the percentage of the design.
And so what would that cost be, around 100,000?
Yes, so for the full design, including the washroom, it would be 120,000 give or take. And then for the lower cost option, I have yet to do on the calculator, but
Okay, so you're talking about the geotechnical services.
yes, so that needs to be done prior to doing any design because that will let us know what the soil conditions and underground is like. So,
I've got
and
that.
also, yeah.
So when you talk about CA consultants, are they the ones who design it?
So with a lower cost alternative, since there's no washing facilities, we don't need to hire multiple different types of contractors. So for that, we would be able to just hire one company, for example, the manufacturer of the spray pad, and they would be able to do everything in-house, the design, the construction, and the CA. Like, we would hire a separate consultant for the CA as having another person that has specialties on it.
If I might share, so if we were to adopt design work for 2026, construction the following year, the design work, if we were to alert whoever's doing that work of the potential for a future washroom maintenance building to be part of this splash pad thing, they could then take into account, couldn't they, where the wiring might go or where the water might go, what have you, could they not?
So it would almost be kind of as one basic budget. The consultant fees would be separated. You can think about it in two different stages.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to make this complicated. We tell the person if we adopt a lower cost proposal.
Yes.
And we authorize tonight the design work for 2026, excuse me, the design work could take into account the potential at some point in the future that there would be a washroom or a maintenance building, so that if they've got to account for where the wiring will be or where the water lines will be, they can have that in their mind. It may never come to fruition, but at least we've contemplated that, which is the concern that I've had.
So if that was the case, then you would go with the cost for the full design for the consultants.
Well, no, you're missing the point. We don't want a design of a washroom and a maintenance.
Oh, just like a location of
We
it?
just want to know, that's right, we just want to
Okay.
tell the person who's designing the lower cost facility, we may at some point in the future want to put in a washroom and a maintenance
Okay.
building. So make sure that you accommodate the need for
Yes.
electricity or water to go to that building. So they could do that, could they not?
Through your worship, through the chair to your worship, yes, they could kind of put a placeholder of where it would be. It's just generally when we go through design, we go through to construction documents to tender. That's usually what is included within the design process.
Okay, but we're only talking about the lower cost proposal here. We're not talking about putting up a washroom. You get that?
We want to use the lower cost option with the ability to expand.
Yes.
But we're not wanting to pay for any work for an expansion that may never take place.
Yep.
Okay. So, Councillor Noyes, so you're looking at design work for 2026, construction 2027, by which time we may have a better insight into whether we need a washroom or don't need a washroom. We may not, but okay. On that basis, I will support your motion. Thank you very much, Ms. Lateef.
You want to push? Okay, go ahead.
I just want to show my appreciation to the mayor.
Okay, good. All right.
I think that's a direction, at least the community then can have some confidence that we're moving. Thank you.
Good. Then we're ready to call a question? Oh, not quite.
I just want to clarify that this would be funds coming from Parkland Reserve, not from general levy.
Director Jane.
Yeah, that's correct. And just to note too, it's from the Parkland Reserve, and point 6 of the memo does comment a bit on the long-term adequacy of that reserve. We do note that in the shorter term, there is adequacy with Parkland, but in the later years, particularly in the last 3 years, we're projecting with the current demand a deficit for that reserve. So just to keep in mind some of the impacts that these adjustments do make in the forecasts.
We good?
And just one last question, and the total amount that we would be approving tonight would be? be 85,000? Is that what we're talking about, or what? I just want to be clear on how
Yeah,
much
can we
we're
make sure we've got
spending and
the amount? We'll include that in the motion.
Through your worship, 100,000. Well, for the lower cost option, really it would be 10,000 because the construction administration would be happening at the same time as construction.
So what about the consultants?
So we don't need the consultant, and you don't need the percentage of the contingency fee that you had mentioned earlier?
So when it comes to the lower cost option, we can sole source it within that one company. So we would hire, they would do the design at the same time and kind of give us, it would be a package, basically.
Okay. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think what Ms. Lateef is saying, 10,000 is just for the deal, looking at the information that's provided in the memo, 10,000 is just for the geotechnical, so we would need little bit, I would say at least 30,000 more. So to be on the safer side, I think we should include 30,000, which is the consultant cost, plus the 10,000 for the geotechnical, because that, we can't proceed before that. And I don't know about the contingency, that Mr. Lateef can speak to it. So to be on, so we don't want to come back to council to increase the budget again. So I think we should at least put it 50,000 to be on the safer side, so we are not coming back to council.
Okay, so 50K? All right.
And then just last question on that
please.
one. And then with this design, we would be looking at future potential expansion for a potential, maybe someday, maybe not, washroom or maintenance facility included in that design.
I think that's maybe almost correct, right?
Yeah, almost. We would put a location of where it could be. However, we would not design the facility and have those drawings ready. So we would have to then hire another consultant and then construction for later on for the restroom
Very good.
and maintenance building.
Councillor Dubanow, do you want to move the amendment then?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move an amendment that council consider a
Design work for 2026 with construction for 2027.
So I'd like to move that council approves a $50,000 for design work on the splash pad for 2026 with anticipated construction for 2027.
Okay. All right. So we'll vote on the amendment first. All those in favor? Opposition carries. Main motion as amended that Councillor Noyes was responsible for. All those in...
No. That's the amendment.
That was...
So what's the, so what does the resolution look like now? Do we simply add this and it'd be $50,000 for design work in 2026 and what have you? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Got it.
So do we need to vote on the...
Yep.
Yep, okay. So original motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you for that. Brings us to 6 presentations. Jen Kendall, CAO, Fort Erie Public Library. Good evening, Ms. Kendall.
All right. Well, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me. Today I'm going to walk you through some of our highlights from 2025 and then our proposed budget for 2026. If I can figure out how to work this thing. There we go. In 2025, our total library receipts were $68,500. $127, which is a 250% increase over 2024. This was due to some really stellar fundraising by the Friends of the Library, but also increase in internal revenues and some successful small grant applications. Our program attendance, visits, and circulations all increased in 2025. Our combined print and digital circulations increased 20% over 2024. So our circulation per cardholder increased about 36% last year. While the digital and physical circulations both increased, physical circulation saw a 28% increase. The largest percentage increase was at the Centennial branch, followed by Stevensville. We added over 5,000 new items to the collection, which is a 30% increase over the amount of items we added in 2024. We're working on ensuring that our collection is closely aligned with community needs by replacing our worn or under-circulating items with things that are popular or requested, and using our circulation data to reinforce that and keep buying what people want to see in the library. Our website also saw robust engagement with over 265,000 interactions. And then compared with the previous year, program attendance increased by nearly 700%. So this is a little more breakdown on the programs. I apologize for the formatting on the slide. I did not notice how tweaked it was, but so last year we had 18,191 attendees across 933 programs. The biggest cohort by far was children, with 43% of the attendance. Adults were in at 28%, and then we added the statistical categories of outreach attendance, all ages, and senior to better capture some granularity on who's attending those programs. And then so I'm just going to talk about the teen programs, which is the smallest sliver of the pie, but I would like to point out that in 2024 we had roughly 20 programs for teens with a total recorded attendance of 53. Last year we had over 500 teen attendees at programs. Adult attendance also increased by about 10 times. So we're really proud of everything that our programmers have accomplished. And these increases in attendance and programs happen despite a reduction in our reliance on external service providers. As some of you may recall, that was a bit of a larger budget item for us. So these programs were done in-house with mostly existing staff. We only outsource when we need to, and that saved nearly $17,000 when compared to the funds expended in 2023. And so I don't have direct comparisons for the new categories, but I look forward to presenting those to you next January. Our funding per capita is in line with previous years and other libraries per region. And I would like to note that the Ontario Library Association is continuing to do a lot of advocacy to the province, asking them to adjust their, not only the provincial funding, but providing more provincial support for shared digital resources, which is not, there's a little bit, but there definitely could be more following and getting more taxpayer money support that way. With 3 locations, our hours of service are one of the highest in the region. We are continually assessing service hours and foot traffic patterns to try to identify areas for improvement or areas where we might need to add capacity in the future. Our operating costs are well below the regional average, and these numbers are from the operations costs reported by each library divided by the total hours that were open in a year. And then a little bit more detail on our spending last year. We were able to keep much of our spending down. Administration costs in particular were reduced by nearly 50% in 2025. We did spend more than anticipated in our building maintenance category due to some emergent issues such as a cracked and lifting sidewalk at Centennial that we had to repair, and then some flooding issues at the Crystal Ridge branch. Due to careful planning, though, we came in under budget in administration, utilities, technology, and programming. So looking ahead, the board has approved a total operating budget of $2,616,000. This represents an incremental increase over the previous year, and the primary driver of that increase is payroll and benefits, which we need to raise to accommodate the wage grids that were approved during bargaining. To ensure that our budget stays balanced, we are proposing modest reduction in a number of categories with the exception of utilities, which we do expect to raise a little bit as the rates are being increased. And so on the revenue side, we are budgeting that we'll get an additional $27,000 in library receipts and another $14,000 in other revenue. And this will be brought in through ongoing efforts to boost internal donations, fundraising, and grants. And then the other revenue will be supported based on our conversations with the Friends and also other new partnerships that we're developing. The contingency plan for a projected shortfall would be to transfer from our trust fund to support collections and programming as allowed by the rules governing our trust fund. Okay, so what we've seen in the past year is that there is a large demand for both programs and materials and it continues to increase month over month. But our capacity to forge community partnerships has improved markedly. We've been successful in aligning many of our offerings with community needs. We've been doing a lot of surveys, being out in the community, trying to figure out what people need and giving it to them. And at the same time, we have noticed that we have a need for stronger marketing. We have, in some surveys, patrons will ask for us to provide things that we're already providing, which means that they just don't know about them. So we need to improve our marketing. So we're going to be working on that in 2026 to make sure that we're marketing effectively, but also expanding our reach and being able to reach the underserved groups that we're still not seeing present in the library in the numbers that we would like to see. So, in conclusion, our proposed 2026 budget reflects a balanced approach. We're investing with the initiatives and programs that have proven effective, tightening spending where possible, and positioning the library to meet growing community expectations. I thank you all for your support, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work together to ensure that the library remains a vibrant hub for learning, connection, and cultural enrichment.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall. Questions? Councillor Noyes?
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation, but also to comment on your monthly brochures. I don't know what the cost is, but I'm sure it's money very well spent. Don't you agree?
We do get a lot of attention from our newsletters. We work very hard on them, so thank you.
Your worship?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, but more importantly, thank you for calming the disturbed waters that you encountered when you came in. Can you go to the slide that deals with expenditures, please?
This one?
Yeah, that's it. So under payroll and benefits, your budget last year was 1.4 million, 1.43 million. Your anticipated expenditure was 1.3 million. Your proposal for 26 is almost 1.55 million. So is there an explanation for the surplus funds in the sense that you didn't expend all of the money that you had budgeted for payroll and benefits?
So we did have a number of vacancies that we were working very hard to fill, but there was still a portion of the year where we were 3 or 4 positions short and attempting to fill those. So that's that gap between the 1.3 and 1.4.
And then if I might, one other question. If you have a surplus at the end of the year, does that money go into a capital reserve fund?
It depends on what the overall balance of the capital reserve fund is, but I would have to bring that to the board and then ask them to make a determination on that.
What would the alternative be? If you had a surplus at the end of the year, what would the alternative be?
The alternative would be to roll it forward into the next year and keep it in the operations, which I don't know is the preferred method of the board, but that would enable us to put more back into collections and programming. But putting it in the reserve would also strengthen our position because we do have a number of issues that still need to be addressed. So I think that would be probably our ideal situation there.
Yeah, I believe that is your policy, but if you could maybe confirm that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you again.
I want to commend you for a year of you know, excellent progress on building the library and its resources. I guess since I'm in question mode, would you not agree that the library has an absolutely stellar staff and that the Friends of the Library are an amazing resource?
I do agree. I am partial because I've hired a lot of the staff myself at this
I
point.
know, but I wanted to get it out there.
Yes, and I do make sure that they know that their hard work is appreciated.
Yeah. And yours.
Thank you.
Okay, all set. Thank you for your presentation. Moves us to reports. 62104 2026 on the floor. Your worship, thank you. Discussion? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just some comments. I will be supporting this. Big supporter of the library. I think it's a very important institution in our community, and that's essentially what it is. They're important institutions. But I just want to make a comment because I was sitting there and I was looking at the amount of growth in the programming attendees, and I was getting like I don't know if some of you saw, like I had a grin come across my face, and I felt very happy to see that, because outreach and having that availability in our community to bring people together, especially seeing the number of kids and the increase, especially looking at, I just jotted some notes down here, the operational funding per hour relative to the programming growth we've seen is phenomenal. So I will be supporting this. I want to extend my appreciation to the CEO, the board for the work that they're doing. This is fantastic. Councillor Christensen is council rep, and let's keep this momentum going. I think this is awesome. This is really nice to see, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Councillor Christensen.
Yeah, I'd like to add to the questions that I made to the CEO. I very much, as a member of the board, the quality of the information that's brought forward, so as a governance body, the quality of the information that's been brought forward to the board that allows us to discuss challenges, to address them in a timely fashion, and to ensure that we're improving. And the fact that we get monthly reports on the programming has been an absolutely wonderful experience as a board member. It's having been appointed sort of after the initial term and through the times that the mayor referred to, the difference in our libraries, the smiles, the positive nature, the hubbub and the busyness is a wonderful thing to see. And again, I can't speak highly enough both of my fellow board members and the CEO and the staff, the community engagement staff who I see out there. Whenever I go to a meeting, Laura's there. And whenever I come in, there's a smile and how do I help you? And it's just wonderful. So I just have to say that because it's not a job thing, it's a passion thing. And yes, I do hope that the provincial government, after, I don't know how, 30 years, sees fit to increase the allocations to public libraries across the province of Ontario.
Thanks, Councillor Christensen. Your worship.
Yeah, I want to thank not only Ms. Kendall, but the members of the library board who are here. It's an extremely important function in our community, and just looking at the data that was provided by Ms. Kendall, we get very good value for the amount of money that we spend. Most of these other municipalities don't have 3 branches or 2.5 branches like we do spread across a large geographic area. So it's very good value. The programs are excellent. The library board members commit a lot of time and energy to make sure that this facility serves the residents. And in a time of economic difficulties like we're in right now, you can go to the library and get a variety of things, books, magazines. I think there's still musical items, newspapers, It's a quiet place. I've run into, I don't go to the library as much as I used to. When my children were younger, we were there several times a week. But it's free. And so people can go to the library. If you don't have a large budget, you can always go to the library. You can always tap into those sources of information. They've got computer items that can be utilized so that I know that a lot of people do use the library. You can tell by the numbers that a lot of people go to their programs. It's a wide variety of programs, and I can't say enough. I was on the library board, I don't know, back in the last century, when I was much younger, and it's always been a point of pride for me because libraries represent books, which represents knowledge, which is the great equalizer in society. It doesn't matter what your economic background is. If you have access to knowledge and you take advantage of that, you can raise yourself up. So I'm a big supporter. I know that all of us have been over the years big supporters of this library. I'm just telling you how I feel about it, and thank you to all of you and Ms. Kendall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was afraid you were going to go with 8-track tapes there at some point, so, you know. All right. All right. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add my 2 cents to this, too. I came on council, one of the main reasons was Stevensville Library was on the chopping block. And I said, heck no. And it was I'm sure, a hard decision for council at that time. The existing library was old, did need changes, was not accessible. There are good reasons why that building could no longer be used. But then the great idea of attaching it to the Memorial Hall, et cetera, et cetera. And last year, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me, and sometimes it serves me well and sometimes it doesn't, that Stevensville had the highest increase in participation. And this year, I think we were second highest in increased participation. And so just think how many years ago they were going to shut this down. And again, we said, heck no, and the people of the town spoke up, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Councillor Redekop was running for mayor at that time.
Well, I wasn't a councillor at the time, but it was definitely an election issue.
Yeah, and he was also very supportive of it, but, and we've come a long way, but all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All good. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposition? Carried. Brings us to 7 operating departmental budgets. I think CEO McQueen is going to start us off here, and then Director Jansen. If you want to just turn around, you guys are clearing the room. Something you said?
It's not personal. I too would like to share my thanks to Jen Kendall for the great work that she's been doing with our team. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
CEO?
So in the 2026 budget process, council and senior management recognized cost pressures in the community, the impact of inflation and economic reality on the residents here in Fort Erie. Staff have worked diligently to look for cost reductions, opportunities for cost savings. We've done some modernization projects that we're starting to see some efficiencies through our budget as well. Exploring new sources of revenue will continue. We'll be looking for new sources of funding like government grants and other things that do help to offset our budget pressures here in town. The 2026 operating budget seeks to balance all those pressures. We're going to continue to provide high quality services with the budget we've brought forward. I do want to take the opportunity to thank the senior staff for hard work on the budget this year. We are facing, similar to residents, cost pressures above inflation with a lot of the cost drivers in the municipality. So I do want to thank the senior management team for stepping up and doing some really hard work. But more than that, I'd like to thank the finance team for the leadership they provide us through as a senior management team to help to find those savings and opportunities for new revenue, and appreciate the leadership that Jonathan Jensen brings to the finance team. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan because he has much more to say about the budget. So thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to council.
Good evening, Director Jansen.
Thank you so much. Cool, if you load the presentation. All right, 2026 levy budget. All of this information, again, is available online. The report and the appendices and a lot of the memo that's on the e-agenda or the council agenda website has a lot more of the information, the details with comparisons by department and division is there for anyone that would want to go through that. As we often say, and I know as council is keen to let everyone know, there's a lot of work and a lot of discussion on the different small and large movements within the budget in any given year. This year, certainly no different. As Chris McQueen said, there's a lot of additional pressures that we were signaling early and through the budget planning process for this year's budget. So I encourage any and all questions, and of course, as we deal with the public too, and there's questions on finance and budget, we do whatever we can to encourage people to participate. We have our Let's Talk Fort Erie page that has a lot of the budget information. We encourage them to reach out to you as council, but certainly to us. So that also is some of the background to tonight's presentation. Just want to say thank you as well to the library and their team, and for it's a pleasure working together with them as well. So the budget really, we often talk about it in context of, it's a great chance annually to look at, well, the priorities, the values, the emerging strategic elements, the things that the town is facing in any given year. Good chance to pause and reflect on the previous year, as the library did as well. So we'll do that tonight, looking at 2025 at a glance, and then go through all the different components that make up the proposed 2026 operating levy budget. Ideally, as we move forward, I'd have a picture of this a staff photo, I guess, of our teams that are involved in all this. As Chris said, so much effort at every level goes into bringing good value and being stewards for the town to our everyday operations that touch our citizens daily in many different ways. So some of the background to the budget for tonight, of course, is council's strategic plan, and we'll comment a little bit more on that as we move ahead. But the budget planning, this year's report was back in October with report CS08, and that did talk about some of the timetable and pressures, as well as the long-term financial planning. There's many components. Of course, just speaking now again of our capital, there's many master plans, official plans, secondary plans, development charge studies that help us have a longer-term view and be strategic with the long-term needs of the municipality. Looking at affordability and as Chris said as well, just leveraging technology. And then council and our corporate subcommittee is really involved in important with helping us to just talk through some of our operational activities and finding efficiencies, looking at funding, and particularly this year, the giving a target for 3.5% in an effort to limit the tax increase with a request to bring anything that has a strong business case forward to council not to exceed 4.25%. Here's a glance of the strat plan. We'll be pleased to have Bev and others coming forward with a report on within the next month, I believe, to highlight some of these for 2025. Just included an overview of some of the many items we have here, many of which are budget related, of course, in terms of supporting them and making sure they're resourced properly, but many good things to celebrate this year, and looking forward to hearing a lot more of those in detail next month. So 2025, we present to council all the comparatives of 2025 with information and entries up until this point. We are still making final payments and adjustments in the coming weeks. So with some of the comparatives, there are conversations and some outstanding elements to those. For the 2025, the projected surplus was in our Q3 report of $284,000. We're expecting it to be near break even and lower possibly than that. And that is, as we've noted in our Q3 and earlier in the year as well, a lot related to development activity. We have dealt with some staff turnover in other areas, particularly tax write-offs have helped buoy that surplus, with that being less again this last year with no reassessment. Then some of the other key elements of our financial cycle is our audit by Grant Thornton, which is in late spring with our financial statements, and then an annual report with that to include recommendations for any year-end variances, whether they be surpluses or deficits. And I've included this the last few years. It's the financial indicators provided and benchmarked for all of Ontario by the province. Some of them you'll be more familiar with reserves and total taxes receivable. That is one where we're seeing in the line number one there, a trend a little bit upwards where we are close to the 10% mark. And provincially that is coming up as well. Just some changes societally and of course with affordability as well. In all but one or six items 1 and 6 were above the averages. And some of those generally, like item 6, has to do with the age of our infrastructure, where you have a newer municipality, they benefit from some lower amortization there. So the overall budget structure, it's a good time to just pause on what we've looked at to date. So for 2026, we have our capital budget of $24 million that was approved back in November and now amended tonight. We have the water and wastewater operations with gross expenditures of $27 million, and then tonight looking at general levy operations with gross expenditures of approximately $50 million. So for tonight, if we look at some of the breakdown of the operating budget, you can see some of the different departmental burden and relationships here, with infrastructure being the largest share at 36 cents on the dollar. That's including our engineering group, our parks and facilities, our roads, recreation and facilities, in our roads, parks, and fleet operations, storm as well. And so you can see all the different components there around that dollar. You're familiar with this by now, but we do first go through a base budget, which is primarily any kind of items that are previously approved revenue or expenditure items that are part of ongoing activities for the town. These are recurring drivers related to those that are noted there as well. So for tonight, just again, just to point people in the right direction, and there are some hyperlinks in this presentation is available through the agenda and on the Let's Talk Fort Erie page, but report CBC 06 is the report that summarizes and highlights the changes through Appendix 1 and supplementary items in Appendix 2. And then as noted earlier, the Appendix 3 has all of the divisional reporting with the memo package containing any supplementary item descriptions and a number of other helpful information, including our reserves and our debt status. This format is similar to the past. We are providing the prior year-to-date actuals and approved budget, of course with the 26 that we're considering tonight, and 27 and 28 forecasts, which are helpful in terms of anticipating trends. And as we begin budget planning, once this budget is approved, it is a good, helpful starting point for looking ahead and tracking multi-year needs and changes. One of the items, of course, for the 2026 will be the adjustments and the changes for expenses for an election. And then you can see the different categories, the way we group different revenues and expenses there. And then financing and transfers is all the different types of funding sources and allocations between different departments. This is mandated by the province and pretty consistent to move program support costs or overhead between different areas. would just note too, maybe on that last slide for 2026, we have made some organizational structure changes. So when it does come to comparability, that is a challenge for us. We'll be reporting our 2025 results with the 2025 approved org structure, but of course, with 2026, we have made those changes. So for revenues for 2026, here's a highlight of a number of areas that are adjustments. OMPF is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, just a slight reduction to about $1.3 million this year. Building and planning fees, so here you can see, and just to note, as noted in the title there, any positive number is unfavorable because it's adding more cost and adding more dollars needed to the budget, and anything negative in this case is, sorry, did I say that right? Anything negative is favorable as it's removing budgeted need from the overall levy. So in the case of the beach admissions and facility rentals, that is an increase of $110,000. Engineering review fees, with some of the forecasting we've done together with the planning group, is an increase of $260,000. The Vision Zero grant is the provincial, it's the regional program that the province of Ontario removed with speed cameras and so on. So the funding we were starting to receive from that is now eliminated. We have some net tax adjustment benefits there where we are projecting some higher supplementals, but more so less tax write-offs. We're benefiting from increased penalties and interest on arrears. So as our tax arrears rate goes up, the unintended benefit of that is some additional revenues for the town, inconsistent with Ontario municipalities. Bank and investment interest income is decreasing or is unfavorable with the change in the rates over the last 18 months in particular. And then all other non-tax revenue summarized there, $136,000 benefit to the town. And here you can see, so the town is relying on taxes 79%. We do work really hard to, of course, increase and enhance all of our non-tax revenue. User fees in particular, you would have received report CBC 02 back on December 3rd to do what we can to be keeping pace with our cost for activity areas that have fees associated with them. That'll be something you see later in our opportunities where we are looking to make sure that we're taking proper care and advantage of areas where we can do better promotional and advertising revenues and expand some fees. And then the next highest level would be the interest and penalties there. So for expenses, a couple slides on highlighting those. That's an increase from the prior year budget of $2.2 million. That's the line you'll see at the bottom of Appendix 1. And that relates primarily to wages and benefits, of which there's some itemized areas where there's been changes to the number of hours. And some positions have grown from part-time to full-time with some strategic need areas. Of course, there'll be some additional costs there for the election. We are phasing in a position from last year's budget to a full 12 months and items like that. Capital, it's a bit more of a modest increase this year. That amount primarily relates to mature debt that we're putting towards capital needs. Stormwater pond, there's some commentary in our report. I encourage you to read in regards to the environmental compliance requirements that have come upon us in the last 2 years. So that's driving a lot of activity, as you can see there, at $500,000. So those we're considering unavoidable costs that we have to bring in to be compliant. We have some greater information there in terms of the number of stormwater ponds and the plan to address those provincial requirements. But an example of how legislative requirements do impact us in any given year. Insurance negotiated at a modest increase there. That was good news. We have as well the debt costs. Those are being repurposed, as I noted earlier, into capital transfers. So we're thankful to have two debt components that are retiring this year and able to be benefiting our long-term asset needs. The library, as discussed, the impacts to the town's budget with the grant request, as noted in CBC 04, is $74,000. Then we've looked at some of the more recent grant programs we have, in particular the Heritage Property Grant Program, the Affordable Housing CIP Program, and the Industrial DC Grant Program. In each of those cases, respectively, we're contributing annually $50,000, $250,000, and $600,000. So we've reduced the Heritage Property back to 0 temporarily, affordable housing down to 200, and the industrial DC down to 500. In particular, because with these programs, when they were established, a couple of them 3 and 4 years ago, they were established with funding, annual funding that has gone into reserve. So we have reserves available to assist with demand in those areas over the next couple of years, and we'll be reviewing the longer term need as those programs grow and mature. All other grants and program partnerships are just a small change there, and then all other expenses, an increase of $150,000. And when broken down with our different expense categories, you can see that wages and benefits is almost 50% or 48% of the town expenditures, materials and supplies at 22, and so on. Not much change with MPAC, or the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, this year, noted again in the provincial financial update or the economic update. But we do show here the a reference, a couple things, a reference to our assessment report prepared by Dana Lee in CBC 05 that comments on the assessment growth. But otherwise, quiet year. Not much going on this slide with some of the reassessment shifts. This is a risk that we talk about in note later, where once that reassessment comes, there'll be it'll upend many things, shifts within the tax classes, between tax classes, and so on. So there'll be a lot of communication and education needed for that to help for a smooth transition. And just to note there, though, that the total assessment growth for the town at the top noted there is 2.21%. And here's a graph that shows the recent history in the last 5 years for assessment growth. So you see a peak in 2024, and then 2026 is just slightly higher than 2025. So a 5-year average of about 2.41, so just below this year, the 5-year average. And so 2.21% is revenue growth for the budget of $814,000. So to summarize the actual dollars, so we present the median household change later, but for the dollar changes for the 2026 budget, it's an increase, small increase in revenues of $75,000, an increase in expenses of 2.2 for a net total of 2.1. When that total is factored in or combined with the offset of assessment growth, that's a total base budget increase of 3.57%. Supplementary, this again is more of a modest year in terms of our efforts to keep incremental or growth related requests to a minimum. There's 4 items this year. There's 1 that's a one-time reserve funded, and 3 that are one-time reserve funded that are new that we'll be considering in the memo package and in the slide to come. Here they are. The 2.1 is a request for a $500,000 coal docks grant to Niagara Parks Commission, funded from our general levy rate stabilization reserve. This is an item that council would have seen actually in our capital budget a year or 2 ago, that when we reviewed it again and the plans for the town, really we were not capitalizing any of the works there, so we did convert it to a grant towards the organization. So that requested item and background is available in supplementary item 2.1 in your package. And then you see the three others below that, the $250,000 urban ditching master plan. We have done a rural ditching master plan a number of years ago, but that's an update for $150,000. And then consultants for fire prevention, leadership, and development that we've identified for $125,000. Looking at reserves, they are an important reliance that we discuss, and they are a risk as well for any year of how we use them and how much we rely on them. But here you can see the overall picture of reserve balances over the last 5 years and the contributions, particularly looking on the bottom right. The goal there, as is common not only in our province but beyond, is to make sure we're strategically contributing to the long-term needs of our assets, which we have not been doing enough of. The town has been leading in that area, but there certainly with every study we do, we're identifying more and more need. So just some overview of some of both the balances and the annual contributions in that regard on that slide. This is the table on the right is the table that would have accompanied the report to council in IS 05 back in July of 2024 to show the gap in need for each of our asset category items. So for the levy, this excludes water and wastewater, that would be $37 million. And we will be bringing forward a report with that in the coming weeks to speak to options and scenarios that we can consider over many years for addressing that as a financial strategy. But, want to be clear and give good credit to council. We have benefited from years of strong, sustained investments when it hurts and when it's the right thing to do. And we consider it every year and what the pace and what the long-term need might be, but we certainly have come a long ways than where we were 10 and 15 years ago. So thank you to council for focusing on the long-term as well as the short-term needs of the town. So here's just a slide on that. We plan to bring it to council hopefully on February 9th. We're in the final stages of that report with different financial scenarios. We examine and consider and hope for every single piece of reserve and grant, or particularly grant usage for that. I know our senior leadership team works hard, our CAO works hard to do what we can to maximize that and be creative to help solicit that other level of government funding to help address our needs here in the town. I'll focus just on a couple things here. This is helpful for those that are following along and may want to know how the taxes and how the budget is translated into tax rates and so on. But this slide also does update our annual comparison with others from the BMA study, which is province-wide. So Fort Erie taxes for like properties from the last BMA study that was just released in December, we were 4,131, which is below the average of Niagara average of 4,672%. So there you can see we're lower by 12%. So in addition to what we're doing tonight, Fort Erie could increase taxes an additional 12% and just be approaching the average in Niagara. And really it is, and something I maybe should circulate as well, but when it comes to the other classifications, so that focuses on the most common type of residential property, but when you look at other types of properties, 2 stories, multi-res, and non-residential with commercial and industrial, we are below average again this year for all other classifications. So this is the graph that accompanies that to look. This is the total municipal burden. The next slide will look at just taxes, but municipal burden is, again, the best way of us comparing when it comes to everything we collect and the way amounts are moved between different budgets. And here you can see that Fort Erie is the 5th lowest on that scale and just 2 positions below average within Niagara. And then this is the the comparison of tax. And here you can see this goes to show again, as we talk about during our water and wastewater deliberations, that we are relatively high with water wastewater, but when it comes to tax, the Fort Erie is second lowest in Niagara. Levy history from the last number of years. The two bars on the right are for the current year. Of course, the base and the supplementary, as we'll find out and talk more about soon, are the same this year. We're not proposing any increments at this point through that. But you can see the different pressures through different years and as a relationship to some of the indexes we follow and compile for that. So when we look at the proposed 2026, all of the revenue and expense impacts we've discussed for the median residential home, it should say median actually there, it's not the average, of 200,300. Again, just being mindful that that's a very old province-wide assessment that would be a household valued in January of 2016. It is a tax bill for Fort Erie for the town on the second line, moving from $1,555 to $1,610, or 3.5%. When you combine the Fort Erie impacts of both the region and education, the total increase on the bill that our taxpayers would receive, including those others that we bill for as well, would be 4.50%. And to the side is shown the same calculation for a $100,000 assessment, which helps to prorate those amounts and those impacts out to other assessed values. Risks, there certainly are a number, a few key ones here to just highlight. Economic changes in interest rates, which affects both our investments and debt, and many of the market inflationary pressures, as Chris noted, that we are seeing, particularly when it comes to carrying our capital program, do exceed some of the typical CPI indices. Reserves, we have scaled back to rely greater on reserves for those programs we highlighted, and all of the supplementary items have over $1 million being transferred from reserves for those. So part of that 3.5% is benefiting from reserves getting transferred to help reduce that by over $1 million. A note, we do have the building permit surplus reserve, which is dedicated to those operations. That'd be an example of an area where development and the environment and the economic environment has changed such that this year's budget, we're drawing on the reserve of approximately $500,000. And with 2026 operations and forecasts that we're looking at, that will about empty the reserve based on some of our other longer term forecasts. The asset management we've talked about and we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. Legislation, again, some of the policy changes, particularly from soils in the last couple of years, and again for our storm ponds, any of those changes. And of course, it's important to note DCs, which have gone through many different changes the last 2 years, which jeopardize and impact our revenues. Assessment, as noted, development volatility, that does considerably impact our fees and charges, which we really work to promote and to maximize so as to minimize our tax burden. And then for tonight's presentation is just a note, as usual, that we've included as much information as is available for both the tax rates of the others that we bill for with the region and the education and the tax ratios. We're not recommending as area treasurers any changes to the tax ratios, which does shift or can shift burden between different tax classes, but that at this point, my expectation is that should stay the same. But of course, there will be further regional deliberations in the coming weeks that may change. Some of the opportunities. So specific to the budget with what we've presented, we are saying there is a strong business case to consider something greater than 3.5% and not to exceed 4.25%. And that would be an additional $282,000 to address the long-term financial needs. That is in the report under alternatives. Again, we are putting some effort and some additional funds to that with our maturing debt, but there is long-term needs that's well documented that would help address. And any version of that, would go towards helping meet those long-term needs. Grant programs, as noted, we are reducing those, so we do see that as an opportunity in the future to evaluate that and to refine what the needs over the long term are. Some of them are more difficult to predict and to anticipate than others. Modernization has certainly been a theme for the last few years for the town, and there are costs to that, as you would have seen in the capital budget with the contact center as a service item and some of the other infrastructure needs and the systems that we are looking to help enhance our services to the town. Funding advocacy is ongoing with grants, fees, and as the CAO noted too, we do review those annually through that fees report, but we do see some areas with low cost recovery that we want to work together with management and with council to see where we can do better to have higher cost recovery for those areas and to enhance some of the revenues that can go with promotion and advertising as well. Shared services, we do work regularly with other municipalities and are eager to try and find ways to reduce costs through that. And then, of course, the assessment base, we benefit from a stronger mix, as we've seen in the last few years with greater industrial in particular. Forecast for 2027, when we've compiled everything and look beyond, is an increase of 7.1% and 4.4% for 2028. We do have, as an opportunity as well, the debt next maturing at the end of this year of $241,000, again, which we would expect to propose as an increase to our capital. Some of the operating impacts of capital were discussed back in November. There's no elements or there's nothing being proposed that would have multi-year impacts with supplementary as we normally would with staffing requests. And then again, some continued market pressures, particularly in some areas with consulting, some of the modernization costs, and the environmental compliance areas. The report is broken down with 8 recommendation areas, with supplementary items, the 4 we did note: grants, BIA levies, a provincial Ontario regulation requirement that often is probably more wordy than it needs to be in the report, but it does meet a provincial requirement of excluding amortization. And then the final is the 2026 levy adoption, including all supplementary items. And just to summarize, I think it is helpful to look across the bottom of Appendix 2, because I think that gives the greatest snapshot of what's changing and how it impacts our users, our taxpayers. It would be a proposed tax levy for 2026 of $38,954,000, which is increasing year over year of 3.57%, which for the median household is 3.50%. The total tax bill, when including the region again, is 4.5. And all of this, the total tax bill would be an increase per month of $13.65. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll turn it back to the chair for any presentation questions.
Thank you very much, Director. Questions? Your Worship.
Thank you again, Mr. Jansen, for that truly stimulating presentation. So in terms of the region's tax levy increase, my understanding is that won't be known until at least February the 12th. Is that your understanding?
That's right.
So that if it's anything over 6.14%, that would have an impact upwards with respect to what local taxpayers would be obligated to pay.
So right now, the everything that's been presented has been included with their, I think, most recent report, which was 6.98% for their levy.
Correct.
It includes the waste management, which is already approved, and the transit, which is already approved.
Right.
So yeah, it's based, so anything less than the 6.98% for the region would reduce the 4.5% lower.
Well, I'm not sure you've used 6.14, have you not?
Sorry, I think I know what you're talking about. That line, if you go to present slide number, and maybe you can help me, what number was that? That is including not just the regional levy, but also transit and waste, which of course were less than 6.98.
They moderated.
That's
the
right.
Overall, okay. That's good to know. So then there could be potentially further reduction.
That's right.
The region comes down, which I think that may happen. With respect to slide 25, which deals with water, wastewater, deals with the comparison, the residential burden tax, taxes and rates. This figure shows that Fort Erie is among the lower municipalities in Niagara, and that even takes into account the additional funding that we've put into trying to maintain our water and wastewater system.
Yes, that's correct. Good point.
And do we have data that would shed light on what other municipalities are expending as a percentage of their budget with respect to their capital assets?
Yes, again, good point. I know this is something we've struggled at with years. There's not a consistent benchmark. There's not a schedule in our financial information return. BMA doesn't really provide that information either. However, we did include in scope with our financing strategy with Hemson, a request to do some benchmarking in that regard. Fortunately, we've already looked and found some anomalies, but they were trying to pull and request information from individual municipalities to do that.
That would be helpful to know as well, because I think it's important for our residents to appreciate the fact that we spend a fair bit of money with respect to our assets, maintaining our assets, and despite that, there's still this gap between what we expend and what may be required in order to maintain those assets in the long term.
Yep.
My final question had to do with page 29, slide 29. And that was with respect to the building permit fund. That fund, as I understand it, accumulates during years where there's a lot of building activity, a lot of permits issued, a lot of approvals applied for. And so this indicates that for 2026, we will be drawing on that fund because we have staff here that processes applications, but we don't anticipate that we're going to be generating the revenue that we have historically.
That's right.
And that may happen in 2027.
That's what we're expecting, yes.
Is it the intention then that if building activity, development approval activity goes down, that we would be adjusting our human resources relative to that type of thing?
Yes, we've had some early discussions on that, but certainly, we would want to be adjusting our program to the extent we can. We're mindful at any kind of time of hiring where, to minimize the longer term commitments when there is impacts like this. There's some hope and there's some indications provincially that there can be some rebound in the coming year or two, but that's a point well taken.
But there's two aspects of that. Number one, we want to make sure that we maintain our capacity to address an increase in activity. And we have employees that are committed to the community and they're doing important work in the planning and the building departments.
Absolutely.
And my understanding is, and maybe you can confirm this, that 2025 was a difficult year across Ontario in terms of new housing starts, maybe slowdown in development applications. Would you know anything about that?
So I know PBBS does bring forward quarterly reporting that comments on the stats and the trends with that. So, and I know some of our Q3 as well already did flag those lagging revenues as well. So you're absolutely right.
But if I might share, to your knowledge, we still have a flow of applications for development approvals, minor variances, subdivisions, that type of thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, thank you. Other questions? All right, Director Jansen, please pass along our continued appreciation to your group, to all the directors and the senior leadership. We know that this isn't a 9 to 5, and you've got family at home and spouses and that kind of thing that allow you this freedom to help us and the citizens. So please pass our appreciation on to them as well. That without them, we wouldn't be successful. Thank you. We will then continue with reports, 72.105, 2026. Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposition? Carried. And 72.2, Director Jansen, do we have to put the $50,000 for the splash pad on anywhere here?
No, I think that separate motion that was dealt with earlier is sufficient. The only thing I was just note, it was commented before, but the motion or the amendment should note that it was all funded with Parkland Reserve.
Thank you, I believe it was. Okay, great. So, so on the floor then. Thank you, Your Worship. Questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Flagg. And just in regards to the part two, the 500,000 for a Coles Dock grant funding through the general levy, and we're basically giving that to we're not in control of that, we're giving it to someone else. Do we have any input in the final design?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, so that's a project that we've been providing some design concepts for some time. The Peace Bridge Authority is celebrating its 100th anniversary in 2027, and they have committed funding to both sides of the river. A park at the coal docks is something that we were interested in. They are now interested in, and the Parks Commission is interested in, so that there will be contributions from all three levels, because we don't own the land. It has to be a grant as opposed to whatever. So we will have input into the design work. At one point, it looked like we might be doing the design, but because the Parks Commission is going to be, they own the land, or they own some of the land, the balance of the land, they have a long-term option to purchase from the Peace Bridge Authority. So they'll be doing the design work. We will have input into that, and we've already had some input. As you know, I sit on the Niagara Parks Commission, and so as those reports come forward, I have an opportunity to comment, but they will be running those through our staff, and that should be made available to members of council as well. So it's a good project, and yeah, we will have opportunities.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you for that explanation. Do we have any idea of timelines when we may actually see shovels in the ground?
Well, first of all, there may not be a lot of shovels on the ground because we can't do much excavating there because of environmental issues. But the August of 2027 is the centenary, so it's got to be done by then. The design work will be starting shortly, as I understand it, and so those things all have to be taken into account. There will be some construction, particularly the periphery, and then the plan is for a walkway essentially from the coal dock area out to the spit of land to the north. And we should be seeing something, I would think, by midsummer.
Thank you for that.
Other comments? Yes, Your Worship.
I had some questions. So, Mr. Jansen, I'd mentioned earlier that I just had a few questions with respect to the relationship in, this would be Appendix 3, where you outline essentially the summary of the budget and forecast. But in some areas, the budget from 2025 shows a certain number, and then the actuals may be higher or lower, sometimes in a significant amount. But your 2026 budget then seems to feed off of more the budget from 25 as opposed to the actuals. So as an example, in under fine revenue, under revenues, budgeted in 25 for 341,000. Sorry, yeah, received 458, but we're budgeting a smaller amount for 26 than for 25. Is there an explanation for that?
Yes. Yeah, in a number of these areas, there would be single-year changes. There's some, especially with studies and contracts that may be non-continuous and may have a reserve funding as well, but they would show as fluctuations from year to year. So for example, in the fine revenue, there's a few things happening there that I just drilled into here, but the Vision Zero program that we mentioned, that's an example of an item within that fine revenue that is going away. So the approximate $60,000 we had budgeted in and received in '25 will be going away in 2026. In our administrative penalties program, the AMPS, there would have been a backlog and a considerable catch-up, I would say, in the last year or two with our bylaw division, and we expect that to moderate and really stabilize and decrease in the coming years. So that would be another one that had a significant decrease despite the 2025 actuals that we're doing our best to project and look at different drivers and inputs for the future, though that's another one that would have decreased. So when we do meet, just for everyone's benefit, we are looking at 2 years of actuals and trying to identify and extract some of these different changes and different pressures that are our best effort to project ahead, not just based on what actually occurred in the previous years, but to look and anticipate things properly for the future.
So it's a bit more sophisticated than just looking at 3 columns and then do some
Right.
extrapolations. With respect to user fees, I note that the receipts were significantly less than what was budgeted in '25, and yet for '26 you're showing a higher anticipated revenue. And there's a reason for that, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah, that would be one that we actually highlighted in Appendix 1 in the revenue section where we have engineering review fees. So we've worked with planning and have identified a number of larger projects with subdivision and site plans that have some larger 2026, and with some of those, you'll potentially see them come down in future years as well. So for example, under planning fees, there's the increase at the level of detail I'm looking at that would have had actual of under 100,000 in '25 that goes up to 560,000 in '26, and then moderates down to 295,000 in our forecast years. So certainly in any one of those 4 years, when we're looking at things, there are some significant changes that we looked at. That would be a key one in that area, and it did make its way to Appendix 1.
Can I do one more, Chair? Okay, so under expenses, under grants, there's quite a large fluctuation. So 3.6 million budgeted for '25, only little over 2 million received, but for '26 the budget is 2.7. There's a lot of activity there. And
Yeah.
what's that?
That's related primarily to one thing, and that is we had previously expected to pay our first installment for the Niagara South Hospital of $1 million. So that was budgeted for '25. As you well know, did not occur in '25, so that'd be a variance, and we have stopped forecasting that for now until we have a better plan and better expectation for that.
Thank you very much for your information.
Thank you, Your Worship. Other questions? Seeing none, I will assume we're ready to vote. All those in favor? Contrary? Passes unanimously. Thanks again, Director. Well, Your Worship, I will turn the chair back to you.
So Councillor Flagg, I can't imagine, and I don't recall, a more efficient operation of a budget meeting. And I want to thank all of council. As you said, I want to thank the staff for all of the work that they put into this. I know that the public has the impression that we show up once a year for capital, for water, wastewater, for operating budget. Spend a couple hours, go through a few items, and they have no idea how large the material is that we go through. I don't think they have any idea that this work starts early in the year, so this is the culmination of probably 6 or 7 months of work by our staff. And I have to say that we're very fortunate because every year we're able to come in with a budget that is reflective of what the needs of the community are. And almost every year, there's a small surplus. Sometimes there's a larger surplus, depends on what we receive. But Mr. Jansen, I certainly echo the words of the budget chair in terms of you and your staff. And please pass that on to all of them. I know the CAO gets his finger in the pie periodically, and
Yes.
I'm sure he's doing an excellent job as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this stage of the game, I would need, so our next meeting, we don't need a meeting for this, we're done. So the next time we meet with respect to budgets, it will be to pass bylaws. That will be in February. So Councillor Dubanow, I wonder if you'd be good enough to do the traditional honors at the end of a meeting.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to move that Council and Budget Committee adjourn at 7:37 this evening.
All those in favor? And interestingly enough, no one is opposed. That is carried.